Hey gang, Scott here. Welcome to In Post and thanks for joining me. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I built up this vintage 1970s-ish type look for some photos I took along the boardwalk in Rehoboth Beach. If you saw In the Field a few days ago, you saw me visit this stretch of the coast. I had the opportunity to be on the East Coast and took advantage of walking around on the boardwalk, which was a little nostalgic for me. I grew up on the East Coast, and while not in Rehoboth Beach, on the Jersey Shore, walking the boardwalks there. So, kind of had, my past as a child of the 70s in my mind. And when I got to processing the photos, I certainly took the images of the buildings and the boardwalk in that direction. I wanted to share with you the way that I built up that particular look. And the photo we're looking at here, I didn't share this one in the field video. This was just another one I captured. And let's go through how this look got built up. So this is the original image. You can see the little before item up there in the upper right, and hit the / key. And this is where I process things in Lightroom. Not finished, but I'll show you what I did here and when I got to the point of deciding to go full on with the vintage look. So not a lot happening. Like usually you see my videos, I do a lot of masking. Not here, not in Lightroom for this one. Did the basics, kept the Adobe color. I didn't go rich on the landscape stuff. And this was the first decision to lean into a vintage feel, a little less saturation on the photo. Photos from the 70s, they have kind of warmer, earthier tones. They're a little less saturated. They'll have a little grain, things like that. So started that here, and then tone curve wise, just a little, again, leaning into the little more of a matte look. Took that black point and raised it up just a little bit. So again, the notion of there is a bit of a faded look to the image. Also in color grading, this was another choice to leaning toward looks of the past. Cool shadows, so this is our shadows area, a cooler tint. Went with a warm, cool palette for moving to the highlights, and then chose this interestingly but very, very subtle off green there, kind of between the shadows to the highlights. So I'm going around the color wheel and landing on this warm tone. I just chose something in the middle, kind of a natural transition for that. And notice the balance. I've pushed balance more toward the highlight tones. And you can see that before, after. You can see it's getting, the shadows get a little cooler. The overall photo gets a little warmer, leaning into that, warm, earthy tone. And this was about the point where I said, all right, if I'm going to lean in and go, full on vintage look, things like, the film looks from the 70s, I want to get this into ON1 Effects. There's some tools there I want to use to really craft and finish off this type of look. Let me show you what I did in Effects to get the final image. So here's that photo brought over from Lightroom into ON1 Effects 2024. This is the plugin, the standalone effects plugin to Lightroom. And you see I bought a bunch of filters on here. Let's walk through the filter stack from the bottom to the top, see how the look got built up. Now first is a color enhancer, and I'll turn that on, and you'll see right away this got much more opened up, leaning into the faded look. And that's being done with a really large crank on the temperature. And you see if I hover over the image, I've got this radial mask here, this edges shape. So I'm masking away from the edges. So the full effect is on the inner part of the oval. And so I have like a bit of a vignette where that warmth and that temperature is not being laid down to the corners. Now the thing is, you might be thinking, oh well, wait, why didn't you just do that in Lightroom, right? You can grab a radial, throw the temperature and crank it way up. Well, the thing I used for effects here is a blending mode. Because if I just cranked up temperature, this would have gotten very, very yellow. If I open up the blending area, so I'll open the blending area, and notice the blend mode is set to screen, right? If I had it at normal, that's very yellow. But screen tempered that down and then lowered the opacity to 70%. So wanting the blending options for the filters was important, especially for this particular look. And this one filter really set the tone for everything else. No pun intended. Let's look at curves now. So curves, I'll turn this on and you'll see the shadows are getting bluer. And I chose to do this with a curve because I want the warm, cool palette. Well, I can do that with the curves, right? If I raise the curve in the blues, I'm adding blue, and I'm doing that to the shadow area. And if I lower blue toward the highlights, I'm adding warmth. So I get this warm, cool going on here. And I was mainly interested in just adding a little bit more coolness to the shadows. It's another characteristic of some older film styles and looks from the late 70s, getting that cooler tone in there. And I really noticed it on the boardwalk, before and after. I like that. I like that cooler tone, that teal. Now I've got a pair of textures. Now the first one we'll see is a light leak. And you'll see that coming in from the right-hand side, before and after. And so light leaks and the mode was lighter. This one I just chose right out of the library from ON1. Lowered the opacity of it, of the strength of the texture itself, and even fiddled with the opacity overall on the full strength of the filter. Quite honestly, I probably could have done this with just one slider because I wasn't doing anything else with the different sliders themselves. But I do want to point out, if I just push that back up to 100% so you can see where that light leak is coming. I don't remember what I did or if I had to, but rotating it so that it made sense for the photo. The sun is clearly from the right-hand side, the right edge. That's where the sun's coming up. And so I wanted the light leak to play naturally and nicely with the natural direction of the sun. So that was important. If this was a different angle, I want that light leak to kind of be bleeding in from the sunlight, because I'm not trying to create like the look of this photo's been in a box for 50 years. I just wanted that kind of feel to it, but in this case, playing it and matching it with natural lighting. Now the next texture, this is another one that has a mask on it. We'll turn that one on. And this is just to add in some kind of, just a little grit and a little, texture to it, some papery feel. This one's tattered paper. It's a very subtle touch. I'm trying to see, like, if I zoom in over here on this right edge, you can see where it's starting to come through. Like here on this this bluish teal. If I turn off the texture, you see it go away. Turning it on, coming back. A very subtle thing, but it did add a little extra character to the photo. And as I do the before and after, you start to notice it more and more, especially in the shadow areas. It really showed up more in the shadows, and wanting to have, this is where it was like, yeah, this is the image that's been in a photo album for a bunch of years, or in a shoebox or something. There's just a tactile feel to the image there. The tapering off was really so I didn't add too much texture in the center. I don't want to have the texture be overpowering to the subject. This particular shop, this stand where people can go get their coffee and so forth. So you'll notice that the mask here is downplaying the texture on the inner part and letting it bleed out and be full strength around the edges of the photo. Film grain. Added a touch of film grain. Now this photo, this was captured at like an ISO 400, so there's already a little noise. We zoom in here, you can see, like especially in the darker areas, there's some noise in there just because of the higher ISO. And I don't know if this is going to come through on compressed video. I'm seeing a little bit of change, like in the underneath the shadow area of like this pink section. Why did I add the grain? Mainly because I'm turning this into a preset, and so generally speaking, I want a little bit of grain in a look that's trying to emulate something from the 1970s. In this photo, it didn't play in too much, but kept it there, so when I save out the preset, I've got it there. And then finally, zoom back out, we'll see the vignette, right? And I've done tons of videos on vignettes. You know how I work with vignettes. Classic vignette, just to draw the eye together. So all that added up, this is what was out of Lightroom, and this is what that final look became through this series of filters in ON1 Effects. So that's how the look was built up, and the key things for turning to ON1 Effects were the blending modes, being able to use blending modes on the different filters, as well as the ease of use of the texture filters to blend in a light leak and that paper look. And as much as I like doing my textures with layers, when they're in an effects filter, that lends it to a preset, because now I have this styled preset, and I'll apply that to several of the images I took from this particular shoot. So all of my boardwalk shop photos have a particular look, feel, and style that's consistent across them all. Hope you found the video useful. If you have questions, go ahead and drop them below. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.